And here we go again, Mark.
Yes, here we go again. Uh,
Not just because we're talking about movies, because we're hanging out all the time talking about movies, including most recently that lovely fellow you got in the back there, Jaws 3D. We discussed last. Was that? Yeah, that was last night. Wow,
that was last night because we had to change it, which was the anniversary of its premiere. So that was kind of fun
that was a
to do
long
it.
time. That was. It feels like it was forever ago, but it was 24. Oh my gosh, like 24 hours ago. Wild. But we're here tonight to enact the latest installment of Here We Go Again, where we look at a film and its remake. And we're doing it's a little bit different this time because this is actually a requel, where the 1997 Jim Gillespie film has been remade, uh, but it's also a soft reboot of what they're hoping is going to be a new horror franchise, this time directed and co-written by Jennifer Caitlin Robinson. Um, I'm very curious to hear what you think about this movie. I caught it at an advanced screening early last week, so with all the other stuff that I've watched in the interim, it's beginning to fade out of my mind. But you saw it a little bit more recently, so maybe you can help
I
me out.
did.
First of all, Mark, the movie man Krawcheck of Special Mark Productions and Spoiler Room Podcast, welcome. How you doing?
Oh, we're doing. I'm happy to be here and talk about this. I've been talking about it with a few people, so happy to be on and yeah, compare these two. I just finished watching the original today. I threw it in for the hell of it, just to watch, and yeah, I got some thoughts.
All right. So you went in the reverse order. You watched the remake and then
Yeah.
the original. I did it I guess the proper chronological way. I watched I Know What You Did Last Summer. I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, and then the remake or requel, whatever.
Oh, you ran just the first two and not the third one, which really had nothing to do with the other two. So
And that was my out. I had read or looked it up. I'm like, I don't want to do this again. Unfortunately, it looked like it was kind of disconnected from the
yeah, it
original
was
lore.
pretty much disconnected from the other two. So,
Oh,
and then there was a series as well. There was a limited series as well
I
of I Know What You Did Last Summer.
I saw that in my research. I never watched it. I have vague recollections of it being a thing, but I never bothered. And part of that is because the original 1997 movie was written by Kevin Williamson, who co-written by Kevin Williamson and Lois Duncan. And Williamson was on a high, of course, from the Scream series and Dawson's Creek, and he spawned a whole bunch of imitators. He was almost I guess Buffy kind of overlapped a little bit, but he was sort of the prototypical Joss Whedon before Joss Whedon really took off. A lot of knowing, self-referential, pop-heavy characters and dialogue, but he applied that to the world of horror, which in Scream was great because of the deconstruction of the slasher genre. But I Know What You Did Last Summer was pretty much just a straight-up horror slasher movie with the zippy dialogue that, for my money, didn't quite work as well. I don't know why. And I also don't quite think of it as a very good slasher because that film and its sequel, most of the movie is just characters like talking to each other, standing around, reading cryptic notes, and then the murders start happening, but they're not very graphic and they're too infrequent. There's not a high body count in these films. So the one thing I will give this new version is it's bloody as hell, and in some ways kind of creatively so, and I appreciate that, but also I think has the same problems as the 97 one.
Yeah, no, I never was a bit. I know this may sound blasphemous, but I was never really a big fan of I Know What You Did Last Summer because it felt like it was on the coattails of Scream. But then at that point in time, and I was talking to this with the other night with horror miser Lamont Monty G. There were a lot of those right when Scream launched that young teenager college kid slasher genre because you had like Cherry Falls. You did have the fun horror comedy Idle Hands though, but you had Urban Legends in here. You had, I mean, there was like 5 or 6, but if you looked at it like a scene from any one of those, you weren't going to be able to really tell which movie that was from because they all kind of blended together. And I Know What You Did Last Summer, especially watching the original just now, it's okay, but I think it was more popular because of its cast than its actual story, because I Know What You Did Last Summer was starring pretty much all the big name, the up and coming or the hot names of the time, of those 20 somethings that were out there. And I call it the trio of people with 3 names. You know,
Well,
and I
because you
think
had Sarah Michelle Gellar, Jennifer Love Hewitt, Freddie
and Freddie
Prinze
Prinze
Jr. I think
Jr.
it's kind of
It's a little okay. It's a little
it's a little third
stretch.
namey, but I'll allow it. And then Ryan Phillippe,
Yeah.
but but yeah, it's interesting because it was a year or 2 years later there'd be Cruel Intentions, which reunited Ryan Phillippe and Sarah Michelle Gellar. So yeah, there was this time where they were just recycling all these WB stars into these horror movies. And there goes your camera.
I'm still here. The camera, I don't know why I cut again. Working on it. But go ahead. I'll be right back.
Oh, okay.
I'm still here.
Did someone slice your cable with a hook?
Yeah, someone sliced my cable with the hook. That's exactly what happened. So sorry about that.
No, I can call for help if you need to.
No, we're good.
The fisherman is coming from inside the house. Mark, run.
Yeah, I'll bring the camera back. Go ahead, keep going.
Oh yeah, no worries. But yeah, on rewatching it, I think the sequel, the requel, I guess, made me appreciate the original a bit more. Basically, and I got to put up the spoiler banner here because we're going to start talking some deep cuts here, including some things that happen towards the end of the film that really left a bad taste in my mouth. But was it our two lead kind of romantic characters from the 97 version are Julie and Ray. Jennifer Love Hewitt and Freddie Prinze Jr., and they're getting ready to go their separate ways to college. And I think that she loses her virginity to him on that beach. They're on a couple's date, and Sarah Michelle Gellar and Ryan Phillippe, Helen and Barry, 2 names you don't really see much anymore. And even in 97, they're off canoodling, and it's a very sweet moment. But then Barry is a raging alcoholic, and they decide to go on a little joyride in this, is it Maine or North Carolina or one of these places, a little seaside town. They get into a car accident because Barry is drunk off his arse, and he's not driving, fortunately, but he is causing it so much of a distraction, hanging out the sunroof, that the car swerves and hits someone. There's a body. Looks like it's dead. They decide to throw the body into the ocean and decide never to speak about this incident again for very obvious reasons. 1 year later, everyone kind of comes back to town for July 4th, because that's when the original takes place, is July 4th for the Croaker Festival. I don't really know what a croaker is. Is it a fish or something, I imagine?
I think it is. Yeah, I'm not sure what the Croaker Festival was celebrating. But it's a fishing town, so I think it had to do something with fishing.
Yeah. And Helen had just been crowned the Croaker Queen, which will become important later on in the story, and even in the sequel or the requel. But they come back to the town for the July 4th, and all of a sudden this mysterious note shows up saying, "I know what you did last summer." And this is the part I think that works the most, is really showing the contrast between the happy-go-lucky teenagers who are about to go off into college and leave their small town behind. They're full of hopes and dreams, and Helen's going to become an actress, and Julie's going to go off to college. But when we see them a year later, Julie is, it's Jennifer Love Hewitt, so it's hard to make her look, bad, but she really does have that pallid, sunken face and the dark circles under her eyes, and she's completely depressed and racked with this guilt that she's been carrying around for a year. I think her grades are slipping and all sorts of problems. But this drama leads them back together, and also puts them in the crosshairs of this killer who, there's been a million Gorton's fisherman jokes. We'll probably crack a few here tonight, but it's a guy in a big black fisherman slicker with the giant, wide brimmed hat and a hook that he's using to eviscerate people. So they have to figure out the mystery of who this guy is, what does he want, and how do they stop him. Again, as slashers go, pretty low body count. There's a couple of intense scenes, but nothing really to recommend it outside of, hey, it was a quick buck back in 97, which I won't get down on anybody for, but not very memorable. But I guess it did well enough to warrant a sequel, which take place, was it another year later?
Yeah,
I still know what you did last summer.
Yeah, because they end they end I Know What You Did Last Summer with I Still Know written in Steam, and then they do a Nightmare on Elm Street 3 jump scare and go to credits, and then play a really cool cover of Hush, Hush, Come On Baby, Come On, which is the only thing that I remembered for so long from this movie outside of the fishhook guy was that. And yeah, so I still know. So they already planned a sequel, before it felt like this one even was completed. It almost like they're like, no, we're gonna do it for part 1 and 2.
Yeah, and the sequel is well, basically it's spoiler alert, and the banner's down at the bottom, folks. Helen and Barry don't make it out of the first one.
Yeah.
And so it's just Julie and Ray, and they're in the college phase of their life. Ray has stayed back in Southport, kind of just working the docks, and Julie is off at getting her book learning done
With Brandy.
With Brandy, yeah, playing
Yeah.
Carla, who stick a pin in that for later. Wow. But it's funny because she's in school. She and Ray are still together, but they're trying to do the long distance thing, and it's kind of rocky, right? So she ends up befriending / possibly getting interested in this guy named what was his name? Will Benson, played by Matthew Settle, who this is the power of the WB. It reached into the future to predict that Matthew Settle will become a star of one of their biggest shows ever, Gossip Girl, except he was playing the dad of like the high school kids. It was so weird. And seeing him in this movie, because it wasn't that far in the future that happened, I was like, how old is this guy supposed to be? I don't know. He's not a teacher.
It's fun. It's funny you bring up WB, because when I Know What You Did Last Summer came out, and some of these replicas of Scream, playing off that popularity of Scream, they really felt like WB horror films. Because well, they had a decent budget, not a huge budget, but all the young faces that you would have seen, in shows, and in fact, a lot of the stars in these 20-something horror films were in TV shows at that time as well.
Oh yeah.
Or had just finished the TV shows. So it was like a little bit of stunt casting there as well with with these later films, with these Scream knockoffs. So
and I think that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and they're entertaining to various degrees. I enjoyed the original of this more than the remake, which we'll get to in a little while. But
oh, we'll get there. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Just laying the groundwork, because the original does play heavily into the requel in very surprising and I would say unsatisfactory ways for people who are, even if you're not a fan of the original. I like the actors, and I like the characters that they set up. And I'm gonna be the old man shouting at clouds. And I don't know if this is my bias, because I was kind of in my early 20s when these films came out, so they're kind of like, that's my generation watching these films. But I mean, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Jennifer Love Hewitt. Yeah, I'm not going to say Freddie Prinze Jr., because man, he had the look, but that's about it.
That's why he got hired, was the look.
Right. So. But I mean, you look at some of these other movies, like Michael Rosenbaum was in Urban Legend. But these are people who were not just on shows, but they were on pretty good, smart shows playing interesting characters. And they had a distinct look, and they had distinct personalities that they just brought to the screen. I'm jumping ahead here, but the two brunette leads from I Know What You Did Last Summer 2025, you could have told me that they were like biological twins, and I would believe you, because I'm like, wait a second, they look exactly the same.
Oh no, that's one of the many. Yeah, we'll get into it, but yeah, that's one of the many things with that. But you're right. While I was saying, yeah, this is young talent that is taken from TV shows, it emphasis on talent. And that's what I think also what made fans of these spin-offs or whatever, you know, this trend that you had for a while for these 20-something horror films. You know, they were updated formulas from the 80s, from the slasher film. But they had these names that had talent. They brought it. They're actually playing characters. I mean, you have a distinction in your characters between your group of people in the original I Know What You Did Last Summer, and even in the sequel, each of the characters, everybody's their character. I mean, Jennifer Love Hewitt was great. Sarah Michelle Gellar was awesome as Helen Shivers in the first one. You know, she was really showing her talent, and even Ryan Phillip in there. You even get an appearance by Anne Hesh in there.
Oh yeah.
Later on, you know, as the sister of the guy who died. You know, which surprised. I forgot. I'm watching this, and all of a sudden I'm like, wait, is that? Because she's all like dirtied up, like rural, you know, backwoods type of rustic person, so you don't recognize her. I mean, her hair, you know, it was like, holy crap, that's Anne Hesh, because she had long hair too, and you don't it's like but there's talent in the original films, and there's enough distinction with their talent. They're able to make these characters their own, and the new one, you don't get that.
There is, I think, an exception that I don't think I'll ever watch the new version ever again. But there was a character that I was sure was going to go the Helen Shivers route way early on in the picture, and she ended up making it pretty far. And we'll talk about that in a bit.
Yeah.
But I almost feel like that's a fluke.
But yeah, the original, you know, as much as I really loved Scream when it came out. I was young, was 96 or whatever. So I was like 20. So this was like my age group of people in these films. And I really loved Scream because of Wes Craven and all of that. So these other films that came out after it, I enjoyed to various degrees, but I just couldn't help but compare them to the Scream franchise. So it was a little tough. This one, like I said, I liked the characters more so than the killer. I always felt the killer was uninspired in I Know What You Did Last Summer. Really never stood out for me. Even when they put him on the poster and tried to make him iconic, I'm like, I'm not threatened by this guy. I'm sorry. I'm not finding this guy threatening, even with the hook. I'm just like, I'm not.
Well, I think that's it's interesting because you think about iconic killers, and he does have a good look, but in the end, it's just a guy in a slicker with a hook, which if he's chasing after you, yes, that's scary. But you think about the classic, you know, movie villains, you know, Freddy Krueger, you know, Pinhead, you know, you've got a lot of talkers, even the Ghostface killer from Scream, or Ghostface killers, because they're different every movie. They taunt, they have some banter. If you're going to be a silent killer, you'd better be like have a presence like Michael Myers or Jason, where you kind of change in each iteration. This was, it was just, and on top of that, he was an older guy. Like he was probably in his 50s when it's revealed that it was the father of a girl who was killed in a car accident by her boyfriend at the time.
Right.
He killed the boyfriend at the beginning of the movie off screen, and then he got run over by the kids and dumped the body and all that stuff. So he was coming back for revenge. But I'm looking at this guy like he's limber, but I don't see him being that, like that killer moved like a 25-year-old. I don't know.
But, you know, at least in the original, he was more silent than he wanted the remake, who had concrete in his boots.
Well, and I will say, no, I mean, that's a good point. Like, we're inching our way to the original. I think, do you have anything else to say about the remake? Anything else to say about the original that, you know, because we haven't really covered it a lot, but that's because there's just not a whole lot there.
There's not a whole lot there. It's a by the numbers slasher, you know, with an interesting character. I did like a couple of the twists. They throw red herrings at you, but if you just take one beat to think about it, you're like, no, that's not it. I mean, you're trying to do a good job of making, you know, Freddie Prinze Jr., Ray Bronson seem like the bad guy at first. And then, you know, Max, John Galecki, who's in here all of 2 minutes because he was in Roseanne. He's in here, but and they're like, oh, maybe it's him. I'm like, all the red herrings they throw out weren't really good. I liked the story of that it was the dad of the dog. I liked the twist part at the end, and the third act of this one worked for me a lot better than the third act of the remake.
I mean, because they take that requel thing a little bit too far when it's like, oh great, we're going out on a boat again, except it's daytime.
But it's daytime. But no, the original, I can see why it has a fandom. I didn't, when I watched it again, I haven't watched it in probably 20 years, the original. I appreciate it more, especially watching it now. While I still have some problems with it, I do like the talent. I watch it for the talent more so than the killer. And it sounds odd for a slasher, but it's true. I really like the group of young actors at the time playing it, because I'm like, this is what it's trying to do, is be the upgrade of the 80s slasher, which didn't necessarily have great performances, but you had an iconic killer. And in the original I Know What You Did Last Summer, you didn't really have too much of an iconic killer, but you had great performances. So
there's just by recalibrating, they still miss the mark in the other direction. That's interesting,
right? Yeah, at least for me. Yeah. So
I mean, like, it's funny because Jennifer Love Hewitt is, great and everything, but as we kind of talked about, Sarah Michelle Gellar's Helen kind of becomes the more interesting and tragic character. I mean, when she's, Barry is the jock, the guy who wants to fight everybody. He's an alcoholic. He's a raging jerk. And when they're reunited the summer after the incident, he and Helen are, I mean, barely on speaking terms, it seems. And she, who is going to use her Croaker Queen money and fame to go off to New York and become an actress, Julie sees her in a mall, like working at a jewelry or a perfume counter or something.
Yeah, her sister's perfume, their family's actually department store, basically.
Right.
Is what it was, yeah.
And it's like you just see that embarrassment. Like, it was like, hey, it's good to oh shoot. It's like, I thought you went off to New York. She's like, yep, it didn't work out. And even just that, like, you can imagine a version of Helen that is like the version of Julie that we saw a couple of scenes earlier, where she's just like completely, like, she's on the verge of not holding it together. And even Helen's death, I think, was tragic, because there's a whole extended chase scene through their family department store. Her sister gets, horribly murdered. And then Helen just barely escapes with her life. She gets out into this alley and she sees the fireworks, and she follows the fireworks, and she can see the parade marching by. And she's like, I'm only 20 feet from freedom. And then all of a sudden she gets yanked to the side amongst all the garbage and then just hacked to death. And it's not, even though I kind of got down the movie for not having inventive or, gruesome kills, that one was just, it was sad. I really felt it watching it even the second time.
Well, what was even more effective of that one is that it's not an intimate kill like you get with some slashers, where you get a very close up or a medium shot where it's very close, where you can see the killer actually killing the character. Here, you've got the noise of the parade in the background. You don't hear the killer, but you see the image from a distance of the killer raising his hook, and you don't even see it connect with Helen at all. You just know what happened without actually seeing the actual kill. And it's not, and then we don't see her body till later on when she's in the ice chest on the boat. When you actually, see her body.
And even then, you don't really see your body. It registers because she the door opens up and her body falls out amongst a lot of the ice, but there's not a lingering shot on like the wounds or her face. You almost have to infer that that's, like, just by the movie logic, like, oh, that's her, which is, classy, I guess.
It's a little more old school, but I like that. I like that approach, because you're not expecting it in a film like this. And especially with her character, who she was, you're like, okay, even though maybe they tried to do it for the effect of, well, maybe she got out of it, or maybe she's in it. And it's like, no, she got killed. But it was more, it made her death the most effective. I mean, it's the one that I think a lot of people kind of remember too, is just her character in general. You're right. It becomes more about Helen than it really does about Julie James, even though we're following James most of the time.
Yeah. The one thing I got to, it bugged me in 97, and it bugged me when I watched it last week. The fake out of the trunk
Oh,
where Julie's driving and
yeah,
she
there's
notices
no
something's wrong.
way.
She gets out, she opens the trunk, and I think it's Max's body crawling
Yeah,
with crabs, and it's all messed
yeah.
up. She
There's
slams the trunk and then runs to get Helen and Ray and
yeah.
Barry, I guess. And they all come back to the car, and she's like, Max is in there and he's all dead and messed up. And they open up the trunk, and it's completely spotless.
Yeah, there's no even fish side because there were fish, there were dead fish and crabs and Max's body in her trunk. And she's gone, okay, maybe I give you 10 or 15 minutes. And then she comes back with Barry and Helen. Ray wasn't there at first. So that was
Okay.
their throw Ray as a red herring. Because Ray wasn't there right away.
That's
But when
right.
they come back and that trunk is spick and span, I'm like, hell no. I'm like, not with the slimy fish and the crabs you had in there. And okay, if that's the case, I know it's a smaller town, but you're telling me no one in that area in broad daylight noticed him unloading a body and fish and crabs out of
Because it
this
was like,
trunk?
yeah, it was like in a neighborhood, right?
It was the trunk was packed. That's the whole thing. It's not like it was a few, it was a lot.
Yeah, and on top of that, like, I wonder about that scene. Are we meant to think that she was just imagining that, but there's no other indication in the film where she's seeing things or hallucinating or having these kinds of, horrific
Right.
visions. So I feel like we're meant to think that, this killer when he became a murderer, he also became a magician, mastered the art of teleportation, because it would take 10 days just to get the smell out of that
Oh,
trunk.
just the smell. Even if they didn't see it, that carpet was pristine. The car jack that was in there, I loved the old school car jack in there. Well, because she was driving a big car. That would have been at least some slime. It was just like later too, when Barry gets nixed just before Helen does at the Croker Festival where they're on stage and she's supposed to hand she sees Barry in the balcony get aced by the fisherman, and she screams and goes up there and gets everybody's attention. She goes up there with one of the most inept cops in movie history. And they go up there and they're looking around her going, no, there's nobody up there. I'm like, there's no way he cleaned away the blood. I mean, he's hacking the guy with the hook more than once. And then there's a little drip of blood on the banister. I'm like, no. I'm like, no, sorry, no. They would have noticed some blood on the floor. There's no way in less than 3 minutes he killed Barry, dragged his body away, and managed to Mr. Clean the shit. It just.
And I wonder if if maybe that's one of the differences. I mean, again, this movie was a hit, but
Yeah.
it does feel like, I don't want to get into his mind because I can't, but like it felt like Kevin Williamson after Scream realized that he was hot shit and he had all these offers like, hey, do you have any other movies for us? And he's like, well, I've got this thing that I kind of half wrote 20 years ago. Just shoot this, because the dialogue's there, but the storytelling is much sloppier than it was in Scream 1 or Scream 2, and I'll even give you Scream 3. So this definitely felt like, yeah, sure, here, do something with this, and they just didn't. So
it's not, the script is definitely not as tight as Scream, for sure. It feels like there's either some stuff by the wayside or some stuff that was just ideas that they just didn't bother to pursue.
Yeah.
In this one, for sure.
So we're going to skip over gently, or at least not talk about as much in depth. I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. It's a goofy sequel. I like the kind of reveal at the end, the double reveal of, because they win a radio contest to go to the Bahamas or something like that. And but the catch is that it's right in the beginning of hurricane season. So the resort is basically boarded up and there's no life in there except for Jeffrey Combs.
Yay!
This was one of the, I'd never seen this movie before. I always avoided it, but I was like, he's great in this movie.
Jeffrey Combs, I love Jeffrey Combs. He'll be great in almost anything. I just love he throws himself into the role of whatever he's in, and yeah, he's the highlight of I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, for sure.
What, not Jack Black as the white wannabe Rastafarian?
No.
Who dies in the same way that his death reminded me of two deaths from the Friday the 13th series, One was Crispin Glover's thing in the final chapter with the
Yeah.
corkscrew, except this time it's the hook. And then in part 7, the kid who's like sitting at the bottom of the stairs looking at the penis enlarger when Jason comes up and like boom. Although there is that nice thing of like the killer kind of gently goes over the tools that he could use to kill Jack Black's character, and he settles on one giant pair of like gardening shears or something right to the chest.
Yeah.
It was randy. But yeah, so they win this contest. They go there. It turns out the entire thing was a setup. Again, folks, spoiler warning at the bottom. Turns out Will, who is Julie's wannabe boyfriend, was the son of the fisherman from the original film. And the clue is that his name is Will Benson. And he says, "Don't you get it, Julie? Will, Ben's son." And I'm like, oh, okay. That's good. I did not, I didn't pay attention because the guy's so vanilla. He's utterly forgettable.
Yeah.
But, and of course, they do the Scream thing where it turns out that Will and the dad have been in cahoots because the dad actually survived somehow that first movie. And in a really nice turn of events, the dad is attacking Julie, I think, and ends up killing his own son, which drives him like completely insane. And it's kind of, again, it's another kind of a sad death. I mean, the guy was a dirtbag. They're both insane, but it's like, oh, this family is like a tragic story, starting with like the daughter's sister's death like years ago, just like completely, they never recovered from it. But my biggest problem with the movie was Carla, played by Brandy. She, like, it's interesting because Ray spends the entire film in a weird horror movie version of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. He is trying to find a way to get to the
island. Yeah.
He finally shows up at the end and he's kind of playing hero and everything. But the entire time, Carla is like, look, this Will guy is totally into you. And that Ray guy, I'd never met him before. He's just some loser from the docks. Like, Will's hot for you. And Ray can't even be bothered to, he can't be bothered to leave his job for, on a day's notice and go out to the vacation. What a loser, right? I'm like, Carla, you are the worst friend ever. Which, again, we're going to jump ahead to the new I Know What You Did Last Summer at last, but the post-credit sequence in which, yes, they bring back Carla, complete missed opportunity. I'm going to, again, spoilers at the bottom. Ray is the killer, or one of the killers in the new movie. At the end, the post-credit sequence is totally a Jennifer Love Hewitt is now Nick Fury trying to set up the Avengers Initiative by visiting Carla and saying, we've got a fisherman killer problem.
We gotta find the fisherman killer initiative. Yeah.
But Carla is watching the news at her home, and I guess her husband or boyfriend's there. And on the news is the story about how Ray went insane and killed a whole bunch of people in Southport. And I was just waiting for her to say something like, I knew I was right. That guy was no good. And they didn't do anything with it.
Yeah, no, they missed a lot of opportunities in this remake. It was this requel really felt just so vanilla, so in so many ways. It felt so generic, fairly uninspired. It just a cash in of doing, hey, let's do a legacy requel, no less. And if I was a devout fan of I Know What You Did Last Summer, the M. Night Shyamalan twist you get at the end of this film would have pissed me the hell off. I mean, I got pissed off at the end of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the Netflix film, with what they did with Sally at the very end with the character. They built her up, and then she just gets so disrespectfully dispatched. It just, I'm like, you built her up for that, just for the gotcha moment. And that's what you have in the remake with Freddie Prinze Jr. with Ray. You get the gotcha moment because, one, apparently Julie James decided not to be a lawyer. She decided instead to teach about trauma at college.
Yeah.
Her and Ray didn't end up working out after, 2 films of dealing with traumatic events. It didn't work out with them.
You know what they did, Mark? They did the same thing that, I mean, I like The Force Awakens a lot, but they made the same mistake as they did with Han and Leia in the beginning of that movie, because at the end of Return of the Jedi, they're like in love. They're going to go off and make space babies. But then they come back, 30 years later, and they hate each other, and they haven't spoken in like a decade or whatever. And they got a bastard little, rotten kid who's joined the Empire. Sorry, the First Order. Here, at the end of I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, Julie and Ray should be like entwined for life, because they've encountered 3 years now of this weird trauma, from the accident to the killer to the second killer and his son. They came out on top. They're both alive, which should be a sign that, yes, this is meant to work out. But I feel like they were married and it didn't work out.
Right.
So they got divorced, but we never find out what happened. Did Julie sense a darkness in Ray that, he might be going over the edge? In which case she doesn't act like that. She acted like he, cheated on her, or was like bad with like an alcoholic or something like that. Nothing that serious.
No, they never really go into it. And again, if I was a really strong fan of the original series, I would have been upset, one, with that twist, and two, the fact this is what you did with the couple. And the problem with it is it felt shoehorned in. In fact, these legacy characters felt shoehorned in, like, oh, we've got to put these in here, because I actually, even though it wasn't great, I enjoyed this first half of this remake up until they brought in the legacy characters. Because I'm watching this going, okay, you're making a newer, updated version of this story for this younger generation of horror fans, which horror is a young person's genre, even if we don't want to edit, and it felt like it. I mean, they were, the dialogue and everything, it felt like, oh, okay, you're making a slasher formula kind of film for today's demographic of these films. And I was there for it, while it wasn't quite appealing for me, I was still, okay, all right. And then she goes to visit Julie James. I'm like, oh, okay, there's a cameo. There's the cameo because of their discussion. She drops the line that was in the trailer, I just have one question. What did you do last summer? And I'm like, oh my God, that's how you draw the lines of why she's there to talk to you, is what did you do last summer? And I'm like, okay, that's a cameo. And then they have, Ray showing up at the town hall when, after the one public death happens. And I'm like, okay, there's that cameo. But then they show up again and I'm like, oh no. And sure enough, they became regulars. And I'm like, why? You've just taken this film away from possibly your newer audience, because now you have these characters in here that you're not really knowing the significance. And then at the end, freaking Ray's motivation for being the killer was so dumb and out of character for the rest of his character that you had in his two previous films. And I could see that if you set up something with his character to hint at, oh, he hit hard times. But there's really no indication of that outside of him breaking up with Julie James. And he even drops the line, well, I wanted them to remember that the killing still happened in 97 rather than, them covering it up. And Julie James goes, nostalgia is overrated. And I'm like, you said it, sister. I'm like, you'd hit the nail on the head, because I mean, up until that point, well, even the way they varied the story, watching the first one after this one, I'm like, wow, they missed the mark, because literally in the first film, you end up bringing everything back around to where they didn't actually kill an innocent. They almost killed the dad who had actually committed murder. So they actually hit with their car a guy who committed an actual crime.
Well,
so that made your guys kind of a good guy yet, because you're like, okay, and that gets rid of their guilt for the most part.
It's interesting if there's an alternate reality where, and it wouldn't have been a movie, but like if they had gone to the cops in the 97 version and said, hey, look, there's this dead guy. If the cops had come and found some kind of forensic evidence, because there's that the locket or the necklace.
Yeah, the necklace with the spinny
that the boyfriend had, that it belonged to the girl and all that stuff. Like if they had found that and like, yeah, you kind of ran over this guy with your car, but we just discovered that he had just murdered someone. So it's all right.
Yeah, and being a small town, they would have said, you could see them in movie logic going, we're probably going to just let you go on this, and you could still have the killer come back later or whatnot. Yeah. But in this one, it's a car accident because they're standing in front of the road. Now, here's the problem I have with this setup of this crime that happened. Our group of friends meet together. Friends, I put in quotes because I still don't get outside of the two main characters, Danica and Ava, is it? Outside of those two, no one else here really feels like friends with each other at all. They just feel like they're hanger-ons. But anyway, they go to they've gone back together because Danica is getting engaged to one of the friends group, and they're Teddy, and everybody's rich now. Southport has become been revitalized by Teddy's dad. Everybody's rich and got rich homes, which you can't tell them apart. And you can barely tell these characters apart. But they're out there on the road watching where their childhood was, where they watched the fireworks, and they have one car come by, which was but you could see it coming, right? So the guy standing in the road, they move out of the way and the car goes by, no problem. The car that gets into the accident is like the T-Rex at the end of Jurassic Park. It's like he materialized from Back to the Future, and all of a sudden he's there, and when we knew there was a stretch of this road where he would have seen our guy standing in the middle of the road and either slowed down or tried to go around him. So that right there, that setup in this new remake didn't make sense.
No, the only memorable part of that scene, aside from how dumb it was, thank you for laying it out.
Sorry.
No, I'm seriously, because again, I had forgotten like a lot of that because I watched this over a week ago. So you're really helping jog my memory. I'm like, yeah, that was terrible. The one bright spot was it Teddy? Is that his name?
Yeah, Teddy.
The rich kid, Teddy Spencer, played by Tyreek Withers, who is he's going to be starring in the upcoming Jordan Peele movie about like football and demons or something. I don't know. That looks pretty wild.
But it looks wild. Yeah.
But there's one moment that got kind of a chuckle out of the theater when he's in the middle of the road looking at the fireworks and everything. He turns to his friends and he says, "We come to this place for magic." And he starts reciting the Nicole Kidman AMC theater speech. Like, yes, it's about time that made it into like actual pop culture. Oh boy. But so yeah, there's the accident. The car does that whole movie thing where it goes kind of over the edge and then it goes completely over the edge, and they make the pact. Stevie, who is the one girl who's not well off, she's actually working at the local bar, or she's working at the bar a year later. I don't remember if she was.
No, she's working at the bar there as well with her boss, because that's why she was at the party. They were at the rich folks party, and she was kind of the outcast friend, and they invited her back because she was the one that kind of stayed, but everybody else kind of just faded away because she's the odd one. Quote unquote odd one, though they're in the 90s, she would have been dressed up in goth gear. She wasn't in this case, so she didn't really feel like an outsider like the rest. But in the 90s, she would have been totally the goth girl.
Oh yeah, and well, given where she ends up, she was dressed all in black by the end of this movie.
She was. That's true.
But so they go to after Danica's wedding shower thing, they cut to a year later, or after the tragedy that happens after that. Yeah. We pick up with her new wedding shower. She's engaged to this other guy. Teddy is now living on his dad's boat, his luxury yacht in squalor, and he just doesn't care about anything anymore.
Alcoholic, just like Barry.
Yeah, very much drawing those parallels. And you've also got he's so generic. I can't remember what he looked like, much let alone his name. Was it
Milo?
Milo was Jonah Howard King was the hanger on that was kind of into Ava, but I'm not. I was more convinced he'd be into Teddy for some reason. I don't know. But they have the wedding, the new wedding shower, and they're passing out gifts. And there's a card, and Danica picks it up, and it says, "I know what you did last summer." And it's kind of a nice moment because she's like looking around, trying to keep it together, but she's like, "Who sent this? Who is this? Who's anybody here?" And she's like looking around. It's kind of an effective little moment, but then the movie kind of plays out as you'd expect, except there's a higher and more gruesome body count. Now,
there is.
unfortunately, this moment was ruined in the trailer, but late at night, after everyone's kind of gone home, Danica and her new fiance are in her house, and she goes up to take a bath, and he's left in the kitchen, and he's drinking, and he gets fish hooked or speared and then hooked. And then Danica comes down later because she didn't hear any of this because she had her meditation music on and everything, which is how loud was that? Because this guy was really struggling with
He
not
was,
being
but
with trying to stay
yeah,
alive.
depending on how far. I mean, it was a big house. All the houses in here are big, and not mansion, but definitely upper tax bracket type of houses. So it depends on how far away the bathroom was from the kitchen where he was.
Yeah.
So I could kind of see, especially with her Beats on, those are good cancellation headphones. So if you got the music on and she's just zoned out, you're not going to hear anything. I mean, even my little cheapy $30 headphones here, my wife complains on how noise canceling they are when she asks for something and she has to come right here because she's like, and I'm like, I know. But
And,
so
the secret is, Mark, they're not actually noise canceling, are they?
no, but
sorry,
but,
I can't hear you. I got my noise canceling headphones in.
But I never pay attention to the rating. But when he gets speared one down, I'm like, okay, we're going for the R, which I do appreciate because they easily could have gone the modern route of, hey, let's make a slasher film, but do PG-13. And for me, I'm like, if you're going to do a film like this, especially if it's a requel, at least give it the same rating so you have a little more freedom and you can do a little more things with it and get a little more creative with the kills, which I will say, the kills of anyone who wasn't a main character were very creative. All the kills of the main characters were very basic, but whether you got her, Ava after the accident as well, we find that she's just making out with this woman in the public bathroom, and she likes to get choked now.
Mm-hmm.
Which was this odd character moment as well later on when she's with Milo, which I'm just looking at it going, Milo, you deserve to get killed for what you did, man. That was
well, and he also got he got strangled too, right? In
he
the
got
back
strangled.
of the truck.
Yeah, he got strangled. Not in the back of the truck. No.
Right,
That's where you
placed in the
thought
back.
it was going to be. That's where you thought it was going to be. But he actually gets strangled just outside her bedroom. One of the many missed opportunities in this film, by the way, because we get him, he's making out with Ava, and then she pulls this whole choke me, and he's like, wait, what? And unrealistically, the guy just and then because then she goes, okay, never mind. And he goes, no, wait. Suddenly he's like psychoanalyzing her, and I'm like, dude, what the what?
No, Mark, he made the right move. Because when you're with someone and they're like, choke me, like, nope, that's a red card and I'm leaving because I'm not getting involved in that. If she changes her mind or some nonsense.
Well, yeah, I get that. But still, I mean, it was just one of those weird things like, okay, so that's fine. And then he goes out and he's looking for his charger for his phone. He goes to his truck and you think, or his car, and you think, oh, that's where he's going to get killed by the fisherman. And he doesn't. But then he locks himself out of this house because they're at Danica's house. So then he goes around to the window by where their bedroom was and knocks on it. Nothing happens. Fisherman comes up, throws the rope around his neck and chokes him out. And what got me with that is I'm like, you're missing the classic slasher opportunity. You needed to have him knock on the window, have her open the drapes, just as she sees the fisherman guy come up behind him and choke him with the ropes and have her freak out because she's helpless behind the glass watching.
Yeah.
Right. You could have did it that, but instead, Fisher guy kills him, Fisher person, because it could be this other person. No, it wasn't Stevie. That was the dumbest twist ever. But he chokes him, throws him in the back of the car and drives away. So now she thinks Milo ghosted her, but then it doesn't really come up outside of every software going, have you guys heard from Milo? And they're like, he'll be okay. Have you guys? And then he does show up later, his body in the back of the seat. There's like 15 seconds and then they move on. It was just
I mean, they weren't going to be able to do anything for him and they had to like escape the killer or whatever. But I mean, no, I'm glad you corrected me there because what I was thinking about was that whole thing where he is in the back seat of the car, his corpse, and the phone is ringing and everything. And
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of a nice touch because she's like, "Oh, did I must have really upset him if he's
Right.
leaving?" And you see the killer driving his car away to kind of whether or not he was playing a mind game on Ava or not, if it's just a coincidence for the audience's benefit. I thought it was a nice touch.
It was, but again, it doesn't fit the motivation that's revealed later on by our killers. Well, our killer, because he wanted these people, he wanted our young crew to suffer. And I'm like, okay, you suffer by making her think her boyfriend ghosted her. I'm like, that dude, you got to catch with the times. Of course, he's old, so he may not have known. I would have thought killing him in front of her where she couldn't do anything would have tortured her more.
Well, his initial plan was to hack her MySpace and write some nasty things on the wall from Milo.
just spam her friend list with a bunch of bots. That's what he wanted to do. But no, it's you get, they do make some good updates to this story, but for me, I don't get me wrong, I like Jennifer Love Hewitt, I like Freddie Prinze Jr. in all honesty, but their cameos, their presence here actually took away from what this could have been at least a middle of the road, a little bit better modern slasher where it'd be for this generation. Instead, they throw the legacy characters in there, throw in a twist that involves the legacy characters, which doesn't make a lick of sense given the characters that we knew at the end of the other movies. The only cameo that made sense in here was Sarah Michelle Gellar's.
Look, and this is, I just want to pull over here and give you my high level assessment of my experience of watching this movie.
Yeah.
It started off, this is just a remake. This isn't very good. What am I doing here? Then, I'm surprised this character is still alive at this point in the movie. This is getting kind of interesting. Wow, this is really interesting and kind of good. And I like where this is going here. Wait, no, this is kind of terrible. They ripped off Scream for the second time in this movie. The first time it was genius, and I'll get back to my sidebar sidebar before in a minute. But the fiance, when he gets hooked or speared in the kitchen, that's straight up Casey, Drew Barrymore from the beginning of Scream, right? The only thing he didn't have on was some Jiffy Pop.
Yeah, exactly.
And then later, Teddy's death. That is the second part of that opening scene with Drew Barrymore crawling across the grass, gaping wounds, and the killer like stalking and like continuing to hack him up. I mean, and I think it was very effective, both scenes, but I'm still sitting there thinking, I saw this 30 years ago. Damn it. No. So, and by the end, the climax, I was like, okay, I really like this because Freddie Prinze Jr. in the 3 decades since I last saw him in anything, really, he learned how to act. And I thought his adult version of Ray was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And then he gets to be the hero by blowing away the killer who, spoiler alert, it's Stevie. If they had just taken that boat back to shore and gotten off and said, man, that was a weird summer, huh? And then they cut to black with some like rock music, that would have been perfect ending. And, maybe a B+ of a film. It plunges all the way down to F when they do that 4th act nonsense of, oh my God, Stevie wasn't working alone. It was Ray was helping her out. And he turns into a complete psychopath. And then all the goodwill I had about Freddie Prinze Jr.'s acting flushed right down the toilet. Now, it might have just been the editing choices, but when he's attacking Ava, every scene he's doing the like gritted teeth and like sweating and like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, and I was actually kind of, I'm with you as far as, while I say the movie went down for me when the legacy characters came out, him being a hero at the end, I'm like, okay, this makes sense. This is kind of fitting. It didn't make sense that Stevie was the killer because she's, no offense, but considering the kills and how she killed people, she wasn't first the height, and nor would she have had the strength to do some of the, just the way the person that she was cast. You look at her, did like, I know there's people that could take leverage and all kinds of things. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just like, No, she was in cahoots. What I was hoping and what I thought would have made this better for me was about 2/3 of the way through, they introduced this preacher character.
Yes.
And the preacher character has a connection to the kid that went over the edge in the truck. A very close kind of secret relationship with him as well, given the scrapbook we see. And so I was like, oh, maybe he's the killer. You've got me interested, because they bring this character in. He's kind of interested. He's got He's got a connection to the dead, the person who they let die over the edge. I'm like, okay, I like where this is going. And then when they revealed Stevie being the killer, I'm like, she had to have been an accomplice. I'm like, oh, maybe it was the preacher, and she killed the preacher as a loose end because now she didn't need him anymore to help do the killings. I'm like, this would make sense, but that's not what happened.
I mean, honestly, the whole preacher character, that angle, you take that out of the movie and it doesn't change anything.
No,
Really. It's just
right.
meant for a red herring, like you mentioned, a pretty fun, gruesome, not a kill, but the discovery of his body in the church. And then also a scene where Ava is like trapped in the closet of his, his office, and hoping that he doesn't, turn and see very obviously that someone is standing in the closet, because like, it's the thing where at the end, she like fades back into the shadow of the closet and disappears. I'm like, oh, that must've been really obvious that there's someone standing there in the closet if she completely disappeared. Wow. But yeah, it was just, and it's weird because the actor who played the preacher, Austin Nichols, he was on the remake of 90210 from about 15 years ago.
Okay.
And I really liked him on that show, but, and this is the age catches up with us all, but like, he looked kind of rough.
He did.
He was quite the stud back in the day.
But again, I kind of wish that would have gone that angle rather than making Ray the person who helped Stevie kill these people. Because again, the motivation of Ray too was, they forgot about the 97 killings and tried to cover it up, and I'm trying to make them remember. And I'm like, really?
Why? I mean,
why? Especially because they established earlier, people didn't forget about Helen, because they're still putting roses and flowers and a picture on Helen and her sister's grave. They're putting it on Helen's grave every year because there's fresh flowers and a picture there. So people haven't forgotten. And his motivation, her motivation for making them all suffer like she suffered. I'm like, okay, then why didn't you kill Teddy's parents to make him suffer first before you kill him? You have a prime opportunity, especially rich asshole guy. You could have killed them both and had Teddy see that and then kill him, and that would follow more of your motivation. But the motivation they set up, like, doesn't match the actions of what they did up until that point.
Well, especially because the blonde that ends up making out with Ava in that bus station or whatever,
the podcaster,
she hitches a ride with Ava and Milo into Southport, because it turns out she's going there because she has a podcast where she talks about like serial killers and all this other stuff. And she's got a great, Helen Shivers t-shirt, and is, very fun and kind of, morbid. But if Ray's idea is he doesn't want people to forget, maybe he was in a psycho rage, but why would you kill the person who's trying to make an entire podcast series about the murders that happened in your town?
Right. Exactly. And that's what I mean is, it just collapses on itself when they're trying to do this gotcha, haha, out of left field, like I said, M. Night twist type of deal, and they reveal the motivations of her characters, and it doesn't match up. Stevie and Preacher pairing up makes more sense as far as that, because they both are connected to the kid who fell over. Stevie motivated to kill people and having her boss help her because he doesn't want people to forget about the killing. And he's protecting her. I'm like, huh? What?
Yeah, like, because I think he even says when he's talking to Julie, later in the film, they're kind of doing the whole big like killer monologue thing. He's like, yeah, when Stevie came to me and told me about her boyfriend, she turned to me for help. I'm like, deciding to train an apprentice serial killer isn't exactly what I would call help, dude. I'm sure there are doctors in the town. You can have her go talk to somebody.
And here they're ripping off Saw 2. I mean, come on. They're literally ripping off another horror movie. And that's the thing is I was very much it grew into me. I grew into it, and then as it started to taper off, it felt like they were just throwing some moments in there because they were trying to be clever. And in this case, I didn't want that. In all honesty, I'm like, there's many routes they could have gone. They do something in here too that never gets addressed, that I think may have hit the cutting room floor, that is similar to the first film, in that in this case, it's Teddy's jacket ends up going down with the truck because his jacket gets caught on the truck when they're trying to help the kid out of the truck, and his jacket goes over with the truck. And I'm like, oh, okay, so that's going to come back like a year later or whatnot. They mention nothing about the jacket at all. And I'm like, really?
Well, yeah, because if you're dredging up the vehicle from the drink and you notice there's this jacket attached to it, that's going to be some very specific forensic evidence and lead to a bunch of questions. That's the thing about like Teddy and his dad, played by the Rocketeer himself, Billy Campbell.
Oh God, that I barely recognized him. Holy cats.
Still looks great,
He does,
35 years later. Oh my God, 35 years, 34. Wow. But there's, as I mentioned, Teddy takes on the killer and gets in this big, like, it reminded me of the bit with VC Dupree and Friday the 13th, Jason Takes Manhattan, the boxing scene where he's like, yes, screw it, I'm just going to start smacking the shit out of Jason Voorhees. He takes on the killer and gets some good licks in, and there's a struggle, but then of course he doesn't have a hook, so he starts getting slashed, and he gets slashed in some very critical places, ends up crawling on the lawn of his house, and he can see his mom up in the window, and he's like, Mom! And then the killer comes up and messes him up some more. His dad comes down and finds him, and just as the dad is like holding him and embracing him as his son is dying, the killer comes up and murders the father horribly. Right. And it's this great morbid like image, almost like out of a painting or something, of the dad and the son like holding each other as they're kind of dead. I'm like, that's gruesome. It's kind of powerful, but I feel like it's a missed opportunity for a plot that could have gone a more meaningful route, because one of the themes of this series has been kind of like the poor dock workers in this town kind of like struggling to make ends meet. Then later you've got these kind of rich developers coming in and making a posh life for some of them, right? I feel like if Ray's motivation had been, I feel like there's a new element moving into Southport that is trying to cover up the heritage of the town and what happened, kind of like what like they've been talking about the Jaws series on your show. There's nothing wrong with the sharks, we're going to build this giant hotel or this sea park or whatever. It's fine. Keep the beaches open. But that's not what they do here. In fact, the dad and that whole development deal and the rich family, that's another red herring. But the problem is this movie has so many of them that it becomes exhausting, A, and B, there are a couple of those red herrings that are actually really good ideas for movies that they just decide not to do anything with.
The whole angle of Teddy's rich dad being the developer who brought in all this money to Southport and developed all of these very big, huge, 6-figure houses in Southport and revitalized the area, but he also has the police in his back pocket, was an interesting story. And they only touch on it for like a few minutes. The preacher story angle, they only touch on it for maybe 5 minutes. They have, like you said, they've got all these like sprinkling of ideas to where I'm like on the road of this going, hey, that's pretty cool. Let's take that exit. And we go past that exit. And it's like, oh, no, wait. Hey, I want to take that exit. And you don't take that exit. And we're like, oh, we're following the GPS. Okay. Right. Until the very end where you're standing in front of the field and it goes, you've reached your destination. And you're like, wait, what? Wait, Ray's the killer? What?
You'll like this, Mark. A few years ago, I was attending a friend's wedding, and it was in Wisconsin, and I got completely lost. And the GPS ended up, because this wasn't a phone. This is like 15,
Sure,
20 years
sure.
ago
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah.
So it was like the mounted,
Actual GPS mount. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right. I can't remember the name of it. It was G
Yeah,
something, but
Garmin's a Garmin.
Garmin's. Yes, it was a
Yeah.
Garmin. It looked like like an old
Mhm.
CRT TV mounted to your car.
Mhm.
It wanted me to drive into the middle of a lake. I'm like following it, looking at the air. I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, satellites weren't exactly that accurate,
Oh,
or depending on if it's in a little more rural area. Trust me, my wife and I we're actually using a GPS, and we were trying to follow it to get to one of her relatives' house who lives in Chile, Wisconsin, which is just this little town. And we're trying to follow it, and we're in the middle of the field in the winter, and on this road, and in front of us, it looked like the set for a new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, and it said, "You've reached your destination." And her and I are looking at it, go, "We ain't leaving the car." We backed it up. I mean, this is snow too, but she called her relative. We figured it out. It was on the other side, so it was just one of those things where they had it backwards.
oh.
You know,
You made the right move. I wouldn't have gotten
we
out.
right, but this film is kind of like that, in which I wouldn't have minded even if they would have followed a little bit more of the formula, but they were trying so hard to throw these other things at you that after a while, like you said, it watered it down to where you're like, I no, that's not the killer. Thanks for trying, but no, that's not gonna be the killer. What about this idea of the police in his dad's back pocket? Were they behind covering up the killings? They obviously aren't, because you have a podcaster who knows all about the killings and is coming to revisit the murder scenes, you know. But the kids obviously don't know about the killings, because she visits one of the locations from the original kills, which was the department store, which and they're like, and Ava's like, what? And it's like,
Yeah, and even there, they reenact the whole thing with the it's like the dumbwaiter elevator thing
yeah,
with the rope
yes,
and all that.
yes, they reenact the dumbwaiter thing. And again, her death was more slasher like, because the killer was putting it out in public. He literally makes it look like she hung herself out in public from from this location, and trapped Ava in this cage. He But it's like, some of these killings you want people to remember, but you're not doing a very good job of it. Like I said, Milo, for crying out loud, it's like, really? And don't get me, look, I know plot armor. I have watched many slasher films over the 40 some years. They have the worst plot armor injury in this movie that I have seen in a long time. And I'm not talking about Ava. Ava, I kind of get sort of. She gets a knife from Ray in the back, but it doesn't go all the way in. So I'm like, oh, okay, maybe nicked a lung or something, it's in her back. Okay, fine. I've seen that before. But before that, Danica got a hook in the gut and pulled up by Stevie and then dumped into the water. Okay. And I'm like sitting here going, okay, she's dead. But she shows up at the end, and it doesn't seem like, again, no time frame. So it feels like they've only been there a few days, and she's getting out. She had a hook through her gut, and she's like, I'm hungry. And then there's this whole little thing at the end on the beach, and I'm just like,
Oh, that beach thing, like, it's like the movie was like, hey, I know you don't like what we did, but what if we doubled down? Because jumping ahead, Ava and Danica are at the beach. Everything is, fine. And they make this great joke about, like, you see what happens when men refuse to go to therapy? I'm like, oh, that's great.
and
Wow.
then I didn't, that didn't bug me. It was just the whole thing. It was like, no, you got a hook. We've seen the hook kill other people with the exact injury that you got, Danica, but somehow you survived that. And it looks like with a short amount of time, because Ava's got her cast on, but they're both still in their medical, pajamas or whatnot.
Yeah, I don't know when this took place.
It made that coda at the end made absolutely no sense at all. You could have easily ended it a little bit earlier, but this case, it felt so tacked on at the end, and it wasn't needed. And I guess that's why I really only gave it I think he gave it 2 or 2.5. It was so just you had the opportunity to revitalize maybe a young slasher film for the 20 somethings now, and maybe take a little bit of unique approach, and you didn't. And I still don't understand what was in the boots of the fisherman, because he freaking walks like he had 10-pound weights in his boots just to make him more intimidating.
It might have been because he's Freddie Prinze Jr., I guess, and so something's got to make that guy scary. But no, I do want to say that Danica was. Oh wait, hold on a second. I want to pull over some comments.
Sure.
Just real quick.
Yeah.
Because Petty stopped by. Hey, just stopping by to say hello, friends. Petty, I love you. But P.S. Rachel Brosnahan isn't hot. She has less meat than a vegan pizza. Have you never seen a picture where she stands in profile, sir? That's all I'm going to say. The leftover from speaking of pizza, it was a leftover from last week's Superman conversation. So, in case. And then also says Mark is made of iron, always firm every Wednesday. Triple bicep. Love it.
Something.
And David Wilt has some comments. We'll get to that as we wrap up here. But the whole I want to talk about Danica, played by Madeline Klein, an actress that I am not familiar with. My one criticism is there's a lot of close-ups of her in this movie, and she's got those lips,
the collagen implant or whatever. It felt like collagen. I'm not sure, but
there's been speculation that she's had work done. It. Nothing's been proven, but they've got the side-by-side picture and everything. It just does not look natural.
Mm-hmm.
And they're so beefy and pillowy that I could not help but imagine what they would look like turned to a different angle, if you know what I'm saying. I'm like, I don't want to watch that. I'm being honest. And sometimes the truth hurts. But that was horrible of me. But I want to say, I think she was the takeaway of this movie for me.
She is.
Her character, it's almost like she's, if we're going by archetypes from the first movie, yes, she's the Helen. She's the blonde, well-off, attractive one that's kind of high in herself. But in this movie, she is all that. She's kind of ditzy. I kept thinking of her as the Temu Sydney Sweeney. But as she kept staying alive through the movie and indeed making it all the way to the end, I was like, this is great. Yes, I agree. She should not have been able to survive the hook to the guts and then being thrown overboard and then washing up on the beach. I don't buy that. But I was kind of glad to see her and Ava at the end, even though I didn't like their conversation because I think it was frankly sexist. But I was like, if there was a little Scooby Gang spin-off of them solving crimes or something, I think that could be fun, kind of fun.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I liked that as well. I liked that they both survived. I think they didn't need Danica getting the hook. I think with the ruse of Ray shooting Stevie, which he doesn't, they could have pulled that off without Danica actually getting injured at all. He could have just fired. They could have did the quick cut and had Stevie go overboard and just oh, he's a good shot. They could have done it that easy, just not have Danica get hurt, and you still had Ava get in trouble later on, but they had to take Danica out of the picture. They could have just dumped Danica overboard. They could have even just had it that way. But she was an actual character. And when I'm saying this story is vanilla, all the other characters, none of them. I mean, Ava Brooks is really is the character you're supposed to be following, similar to Jennifer Love Hewitt's character, Julie James in the first one. But again, like you said, with the parallels to Helen, you're more drawn to her friend, character. In this case, Danica is far more interesting than the rest of the group of friends, for sure.
And I was thinking about this the whole time I was watching the movie. I don't know if it's because, as we established, I was a big fan of these, WB shows
Sure.
when the original movie came out and all those WB slasher spinoffs, happened. So maybe it's because I was familiar with these actors. I don't know any of the actors in this new movie except for the legacy characters. But what I do know is, aside from Madeline Klein's Danica character, who has a distinct look, all the other young characters in this movie look like they were created by AI. They're just completely like generic, like Grok, make me a generic hot guy, and like, oh, here he is. Grok, make me a generic kind of cucked best friend. Oh, here he is. Grok, make me an artsy character, and then make a friend who's exactly like that. And then look, there you've got Stevie and Ava. It's just the personalities didn't really come through, either, except for Danica. So, and I do think the one thing this movie has that was kind of an innovation over the previous films. I mean, the first movie ended with what we can assume was Julie's dream sequence of, being in the shower and, the
I still know, and yeah.
Right. But in this movie, there's a full-on dream sequence where Danica and Ava are in police custody in the station, and they're in the interrogation room, and Danica falls asleep, and she wakes up in a dream, and it's all this buttery, weird, filtered lighting, and she sees she's at the stage for the Croker pageant, and Sarah Michelle Gellar is there, reprising her role as Helen, kind of giving her a warning about, like, it's the Crazy Ralph warning, like, you're doomed, or that your looks aren't going to last, or you're not going to save you, or something like that. And then she deteriorates into the Crypt Keeper. It's kind of a fun scene. It's something that we haven't seen in these movies before, like that kind of the surrealism, and I appreciated that. What I didn't appreciate was, and again, it's just something I observed, but I'm like, why is the lighting so distinctly strange in this scene? It can't just be because of the dream scene. Oh, that's right. They're doing the
de-aging
X3 or de-aging filter on Sarah Michelle Gellar to make her, I guess, look like Helen did back in 1997, but all it did was make it look like they were trying to not make Sarah Michelle Gellar look old now.
Which is hilarious, because if you see the pictures of Sarah Michelle Gellar and you had a proper makeup person, you didn't need to do de-aging at all, because she looks very similar to the way she looked, in the first film. So, it's one of those things where it didn't bug me, but I thought, like I said, that was probably one of the best uses I've seen of a legacy character, and it was different for sure. To see her just in that one scene, but it made sense. It was part of the plot of the character for Danica. It served a purpose. I was like, this is what I like about a legacy scene right here. This here is what, if you're going to do legacy characters or reference back, there you go. But they could have easily written this where they didn't necessarily need the legacy characters, or just have them appear briefly. And then let these folks have their movie. And that's the problem I kind of had with it, was when the legacy characters show up and they play such a role, you're kind of taking the movie away from these characters, where you're trying to establish something new, because you're just like, well, now you're hanging on to that, but again, it doesn't really matter, because Danica was the only character I really remember. Ava apparently has a childhood home, and even has a room that was left perfect, like when she left for college the first time, but apparently no parents at all, because we never meet her parents.
Well, that's the thing, is like, the original film, they were all they were like seniors in high school. This one, they're in their mid-20s. Because when Ava, we see her going to her childhood room, as you mentioned, in her home, there's a framed picture. It's like class of 2017. I'm like, how the hell old are these people?
That's what I was wondering when I saw class of 2017. I'm like, okay, so then you're going to class of 2021. And then it made me wonder, I'm like, when did they film this?
I don't know, but I understand where you're coming from, Mark. But I think if they left the legacy characters out of this movie,
Mhm.
then you would have probably had whatever that third I Know What You Did Last Summer knockoff,
True.
whatever that we
Mhm.
know exists but didn't bother
Right.
watching. It would have been that.
True.
And there's a part of me that wonders, did they start making this movie with that script and they're like, guys, these actors aren't very good. We got to bring in SMG and J Love and Freddie
Yeah.
Prinze.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe that was it, or like I said, the legacy requels more often than not just aren't working nowadays, and it's not a huge fault by any of the talent or anything on front of the camera necessarily, but it's the screenwriters who more times than not don't seem to understand the source material and what made those movies or those stories memorable.
Yeah.
or interesting. Like in this case, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. It was a rare slasher where it wasn't about the slasher, which is different than Scream, which came out just a year prior to this, to the original. It was about the kids and guilt and grief and dealing with your past, something bad that you did in your past, and all of that, and the fisherman being kind of the representation of that. In this one, you don't get that. Because, like I said, the accident in the first one, they literally hit a guy, picked the body up, and disposed it into the water voluntarily. Okay, they had premeditation to disposing the body. Okay, so they literally actually covered up. In this one, they couldn't help the truck over the edge. And then they didn't tell the cops because one of them was afraid that they were drunk. I'm like, if your dad owns the town, what do you care?
Yeah, there's way too many problems with the setup of this movie, and you kind of just have to imagine that it's the exact same setup as the first one in order to get very far, which is unfortunate. But I think we're gonna wind down here.
Yeah, no,
with some comments. Let's see. Petty, you got a really good question there, but we're going to get to that last because I want to get back up here to Mr. David Wilt because we've been not talking comments for the entire hour and a half almost. Wow.
Sorry.
David Wilt says, no, this is, hey, look, we are doing what the screenwriters of this movie should have done, which is think about and talk out the various problems with this franchise and how to make a decent movie. So yeah, no worries. I think that what makes I Know What You Did Last Summer a cult classic is focused on dealing with guilt. Yeah, there you go.
Exactly.
Mark.
Here we go.
Right. And it's interesting. When you were talking, Mark, I thought of something real quick. If I Know What You Did Last Summer had come out in 1996 and been a hit, and then Scream came out, I think people might have been a bit more forgiving of I Know What You Did Last Summer, because you're right. It's more of a mystery that has some slasher elements to it and a handful of pretty tame kills. But then you kind of ramp that up, like you evolve that with Scream, and then you're kind of off to the races.
Right.
This feels like a step backward from Scream if the expectation is we're relaunching the slashers, when I'm not even really sure that I Know What You Did Last Summer 97 is a real slasher movie. It's almost just like a mystery, kind of like you're talking about.
It isn't really a slasher. And my kid who went with me to see this one, he had seen the other ones. He watched them with his friends many years ago. But we went to see this one, and he goes, and in all honesty, the fisherman with his hook, the hook isn't the most practical slasher weapon, because you kind of it's awkward to try to kill your victims with, it doesn't quite fit, so.
But this guy he worked the sea. He knew how to wield it. He did a good job.
He did a good job. Yes.
And you'll never get me to believe that Stevie had that much skill. Wow.
No, it was Freddie doing, it was Ray doing all the killing, most of the killing.
Was that established? Because I thought they were doing it together, because she took a hook to Danica, right?
She did, but
or not. Yeah, to Danica. Right.
But again, looking at Stevie, unless that's why the boots were loud, she had lifts inside. There's no way Stevie was ahead as tall, if not taller, than Milo and some of the other people that get killed.
I figured it out, Mark. we could go back and watch this new movie again and see how they frame the killer. I'll bet that you see like him from the top, from like the shoulders up, and then from the shoes. What you don't see is if you saw the full body, you'd see Freddie Prinze Jr. lifting up Stevie so that she could like, make the attacks. Yeah, that's what it was. The original movie can be seen as not as a retelling of the original 1980 cult horror film Prom Night, as it is focused on a group of youngsters who commit a horrible act which results in the death of an innocent bystander. Then a year later, they are stalked by a vengeful serial killer.
Yeah.
You know what? I've never seen Prom Night.
Really? Oh, Prom Night's fun.
I gotta watch that at some point.
And then
I just
Prom
remember
Night. Oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I saw more of Hello Betty Lou Prom Night 2 than I saw of the original.
Well, yeah, because you did for obvious reasons, but
not for those reasons. I don't think I haven't seen the whole movie. It sounds like I need to go and
Jamie Lee Curtis was on the front, I believe it was, of Prom Night 2. Betty Lou, I think it was her. But anyway, the poster for Betty Lou was really good, so that's why you saw a lot of it too. They promoted the shit out of that one.
Yeah, they had the video store I went to. They had a really nice tall cardboard standee of her in the coffin with the prom dress. It's great. But yeah, good observation, David. David also says the character of Helen Shivers can be seen as a sort of Janet Leigh from Psycho, where you want to believe that she will survive the massacre.
That's true. Yeah.
Although it's weird because she's another character that you kind of figure is going to be one of the first to go, but she makes it further in the film, and then her counterpart in the new movie makes it all the way to the end and into possible sequels. Freddie Prinze Jr.'s late father was known for appearing on the classic TV series Chico and the Man. Yep, that's right, Freddie Prinze. Before doing a singing career, Brandy was on a TV series Thea. Was Thea before her singing career? Wow. That's the other thing. And I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, Brandy kept talking about, it was like either her or Mekhi Phifer, who played her boyfriend. They kept talking about Brandy being up in her room. And that was like, or Up in the Room. And that was the name of her hit single from a couple years later.
Yeah.
I'm like, was she writing this like while being bored on the set of I Still Know What You Did Last Summer? Wow. The movie's villain, Ben Willis, alias the Fisherman, makes me one of the dead sailors in the 1980s horror classic The Fog, as he also had a hook. In both movies, the main villain wants to avenge his unjustly death. Yep. Yeah. It seems a lot of these horror actors were very popular in shows in the 80s and 90s. Children grew up on, like Jennifer Love Hewitt was on the Disney Channel series. She was on Kids Incorporated? How old is she? Anyway, the original movie is so famous because it's an iconic scene where Julie is screaming out, "What are you waiting for, huh? What are you waiting for?" And you know what? She reprises that role in this movie. Luckily, she doesn't scream it.
And not only that, but they use the music, which doesn't show up to the end credit sequence of the original Hush. They used that in the trailers, and I remember that because I loved that cover of the song. And then they played it at the end credits, but that was, that was also what made the trailer famous for me, was memorable. I remember the trailer more than the movie.
I watched the trailer recently. I'm like, the 90s. Anyway, in the original movie, we see a man sitting on the road, and we don't know if he will be one of these youngsters will accidentally hit with their car. Oh yeah, I think that was the boyfriend, because he was looking at the necklace.
The boyfriend, he was sitting on the edge of the cliff thinking of jumping, but then he hears something in the bushes, and then they cut away later, and we don't go back to him. So
right before he gets cut in too, by the hook. Oh, my favorite, Resigned Chardu says cheap viewers on streamboo.org. I love it when you pop in with all these helpful.
They pop in on my game streams on Twitch when I'm streaming Borderlands 3 and playing. They're there as well. They're everywhere. It's amazing. So good for the support.
But have you ever looked into these cheap viewers on Streamboo?
No. I look for expensive viewers only.
Indeed. Betty says, listening to you speak makes me wonder, Ian, what do you think is the reason for the decline in ideas seen in films today? Is it all made up, or are today's screenwriters brainless? That's its own show, I think, Petty. And I think you just need to know where to look, because this year there have been some pretty outstanding movies that have had strong scripts. In my top films I can recommend, oh my gosh, why can't The Life of Chuck, based on the Stephen King movie. Sinners, thank you, Mark. Companion. Warner Brothers has had a rocking year this year with a whole bunch of films. But yeah, the problem is I think we're so in love with the franchise, or at least Hollywood is, that they just get these people in to write these legacy sequels or these requels or whatever, and they don't have to try because they know the brand is going to get people into seats opening weekend, and hopefully they'll make their money and they move on to the next thing. The other side of it is, with the exception of Sinners, the other movies I mentioned, like Companion and Life of Chuck, were very well critically received, but nobody went to see them, partially because they're like, I don't know what that is. I want the comfort of a Disney Marvel property or a DC movie.
Well, and distribution too. The studios distribute those films out enough so they qualify for the Oscars, those films, but they don't have enough confidence that it's going to actually have a wide audience appeal. In all honesty, I haven't gone and seen it, but at our local theater here, they had the Phoenician project
scheme.
The Phoenician scheme.
Yeah.
Here, which I didn't get a chance to go see it, but it surprised me that made it here to our theater here, because that was usually shown in very limited, looking at it going, that's a very niche type of story. So I think that's part of it as well, is that there are well-crafted stories out there. It's just studios aren't distributing them to the masses because either they don't have confidence in the audience, or they just feel, yeah, we'll just dump it to streaming. We're just going to do enough for it to qualify for the Oscars.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, is like, there is so much content out there that I'm sure what you're looking for, Petty, is available. It's just, you have to really dig to find it in a lot of cases. Or it might just pass you right by if it doesn't show up in your multiplex. Next, Petty also asked, kind of tacking on to that last question, or can there only be a good movie if the script is based on a work by the writer Stephen King? Life of Chuck is a Stephen King story. And if you've not read the short story from If It Bleeds, or if you haven't seen Life of Chuck, there are elements that will make you think of Stephen King, but then there are other, like most of the film and even the short story, you're like, wow, this is Stephen King. This is really good.
Yeah, I want to see Life of Chuck. It didn't show anywhere close to here, though. The closest it showed was an hour away, and I'm like, I can't. But I'm looking forward to watching that one, because I like everybody in it, and it sounded like an intriguing story. And your praise of it, as well as Jeff York's, made me want to see it. So,
unfortunately, it'll probably be available very soon on streaming, because it didn't make much of an impression at the box office. And also, that is, the public is ignorant unless it is a film from a recognized brand. It's this is a tricky conversation that I think could be an entire 3-hour show. But okay, go ahead, Mark.
It is a tricky situation, because just my quick summary with that idea, which, yeah, you could definitely talk another hour on that, is, no, that is the studio thinking they know what the public wants. It's not actually what the public sometimes doesn't know what it wants until a film comes out. Hence Sinners. When Sinners came out, that trailer came out, people were kind of intrigued, but they weren't quite sure what the film was going to be. They knew it was kind of vampire, kind of horror. And I remember very little buzz about it. They're like, they would rather talk about, Final Destination Bloodlines, which had an established. But after that opening weekend of Sinners, people went to it, went, holy crap, this is amazing, and told their friends, and word spread on the internet, and everybody went to it, and everyone I've talked to about it has really enjoyed Sinners, but it didn't have a huge promotion behind it, because I think the studio didn't think it's what the audience wants. And that's the thing, is the audience sometimes doesn't know what it's missing till it's shown what it's missing. And,
yeah, I mean, it's, again,
that's a whole other show. I know. I'm sorry.
Right. No, I'm thinking about Petty's comment. I hesitate to say, even though I might think it sometimes, that the public is ignorant, but I think it's a confluence of different factors. It is unfortunate that we don't get a lot of high tier, thinking person's cinema. But on the other hand, I think it's because we have so much crap out there that when something special does come along, it shines that much brighter, if you can find it. But we are coming up on the runtime of the film we're talking about here tonight. So I'm going to thank Mark from the deepest depths of the Southport Seas for spending your evening with me. And also I'd like to thank, oh, wait, hold on a second. Petty says, thanks, friends. Excellent answers. Thank you again, as always. And thank you, Petty. We love you. But yeah, thanks for hanging out. Folks in the chat, thank you. Even you recommending the streamboo.org cheap viewers. We appreciate your patronage or whatever the hell it is. Next week, we're going to be back talking about another comic book movie. And it's going to be an interesting discussion because it'll be sort of the part 2 of a talk we had last week about Superman. We're going to be talking about the Fantastic Four First Steps, a film that shares an alarming number of similarities to Superman, and but in those similarities are a world of difference. So we'll see what folks think. Go out, see it, check it out. Come prepared to jump in the chat and wrestle with Earth's Mightiest Critics. I don't know if it'll be another 2.5 hour show like it was last time, but it should be fun, guaranteed. And Mark might have something to show at that conversation. Hopefully,
maybe, possibly, we'll see what happens.
I'm rooting for you. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to jinx it, but man, that would be awesome.
It would be.
Anyhow, Mark, the Movie Man Krawcheck of Special Mark Productions and the Spoiler Room Podcast, thank you for hanging out and for enduring this hour and a half with me talking about both versions of I Know What You Did Last Summer and the sequel and some of the other spin-off things. It's been a great pleasure. Folks, please check out Mark's stuff. It's down below with links to his sites and also all of Earth's Mightiest Critics, many of whom could not be here tonight. There's some other things going on in Chicagoland, which sound pretty cool. But until next time, like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, all that stuff. And until next time, whatever that is, thank you very much and take care.